Welcome to Campaigns and Coffee. Grab your mug and let's dive into tales of adventure and the answers to your quirkiest of questions. So, Ken, I understand that your love of Greyhawk and the ending of the last campaign has you coming in and wanting to start a new one. So, tell us about that. It's a new D&D 2024. Is that also
so we
the
got
impetus?
all the stars aligned. So Elemental Apocalypse is on hiatus. Hey, we did an episode on that. We purposely went on a hiatus. They defeated the Shadow Dragon, and then we're like, hey, D&D 2024 is out. It's got a bunch of new rules or tweaks to the existing rules. Why don't we do a test drive of it? It wasn't so much a play test because we know we're going to convert and upgrade to the new version, but it's like, we've got like 7th and 8th level characters. Rather than just try and like upgrade them, let's just start over. Start at 3rd level, so you're low enough to like, be able to grow into the character a little bit, but still high enough to play with some of the features. So we got Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide for 2024. Just got it last week.
Venger has never looked better.
Sorry?
Venger has never looked better.
This is true. It's a great homage to the D&D cartoon, right? But big bad from the D&D cartoon who didn't, for those of you like 5 people who didn't watch it, because everybody went back and watched it, even if you're younger, right? Like, because it was so awesome. But in any case, the key thing about this is it comes with its default setting, which is Greyhawk, right? It actually comes with the Free City of Greyhawk content in the middle. It comes with a map of the Free City of Greyhawk on one side and the environs of the area on the other. I haven't actually taken it out. Oh, it's not the environs. It's it's actually like the original Greyhawk map, right? So the world of Greyhawk map. So eventually I'm gonna get it out.
For those of you who don't have the Greyhawk box set sitting in your basement somewhere.
Correct. And so my friends and I, we've been playing in Greyhawk for years. Like, my group's been together for 26, 27 years, something like that. And most of our adventures have been in Greyhawk. The only time they were in the Free City of Greyhawk, however, they were kicked out of it. There may have been an inn that burned down. There may have been someone who was arrested and executed for capital crimes. There may have been a corpse that was stolen and then subsequently reincarnated or resurrected or some such. He came back. But it was great. But yeah, they are not allowed to go there anymore. New campaign, Free City of Greyhawk. Probably going to do, I don't know how long it's going to last for. It might be like 5 or 6 sessions, maybe a little bit more. We'll see how it goes. Because again, this is a test drive. This isn't meant to be like a full like 3-year campaign, because we're habitual like serial campaigners where we just can't do anything that lasts for less than a year, right?
Yep.
So we're going to see how that goes. But that guided me to thinking, like, I'm digging out my old boxes. So I got holding up the Greyhawk Adventures hardcover by James Ward, right? Like, classic. And I've got my 2nd edition Greyhawk Adventures City of Greyhawk box set. I've got my original, I think, 83 box set was destroyed because, hey kids, old box sets did not actually stay together very well, right? Like, the Mothership box set could be run over by a car and probably still survive. This thing held together with tape.
I disagree there. If you treated the Mothership box set like we treated the box sets when we were kids, it would probably not hold up. It would hold up longer, but when you shove a box set in your backpack, and then, or worse yet, like me, when I didn't have the backpack, I had a plastic library bag, drawstring library bag, and then hold it on my 10-speed, driving my 10-speed with it sometimes going in between the spokes and doing the they don't last very long.
This is true. I can't say that I treated this. I don't think I treated these very nicely, but I do think the construction was a little sturdier. But anyway, so how I'm approaching the new campaign is basically just sort of research. So I'm pulling a bunch of like just my old Greyhawk resources off. I'm doing the Pinterest thing. And so my shtick here, the thing I'm thinking is, it's going to call it Greyhawk 76. Because it takes place in the common year 576. But I really want to lean into like the 70s art style, like wizards and bell bottoms, right? Like that classic sort of like almost like Foopy,
Errol Otis style art.
Yeah, I don't know that. I know the name, but I don't know that. I have to go and look up the example. But yes. But anyway, the whole point is I want to riff on the whole like 70s vibe. So I pulled up a playlist. I started a playlist in Spotify of music released in 1976 as like inspiration, like rock music that was released in 76. So you've got Kiss, you've got I don't know, bands other than Kiss. But, you know, I started a Pinterest board and stuff, and I'm starting to pull all that together. But what's funny is, despite being, well, I mean, maybe because I am going to be 53 soon, you know, I don't really understand what music was released in the 70s. Like, I just grew up with it, right? And so my idea of what was released, say, from like 1971 to 1979, like, it was just there when I was in the 80s listening to music, right? So I didn't know, for example, I'm going to pull up my playlist real quick, like TNT by AC/DC, right? Like 1976, Blitzkrieg Bop, Ramones, 1976, Cherry Bomb by the Runaways, 1976, Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult, 1976. Like, I had no idea.
It's one
I
of
was
my
5.
favorites.
Yeah, so anyway, that's how I'm starting off with my campaign. And I think it's going to be my basis, because I know this is going to be more of a short haul campaign, is I know they're going to be in the Free City. I'm probably going to have some small adventure sites around the Free City, like old crypts, collapsed mines, like the idea, because we want to like kick the tires on the rules as well, right? So I want to maybe have a couple social encounters, that kind of thing. No epic storyline, no massive arc to connect it all together, just sort of like a series of vignettes or maybe like one shots where the adventure lasts for a session or two, and then we move on to the next session or two adventure. So that's where my brain is at. I'm like at the brainstorming session side and just kind of thinking through, finding the inspiration, and maybe it'll eventually gel into actual ideas. So what do you guys do? Because you're starting something similar, right, David?
I am starting something similar. It is, I don't know that it will be a campaign. I'm going to start with that slight caveat there. I started a ShadowDark group in order to get a game group that consistently meets. I don't care what game it is at this point. Aaron and I have taken to saying, hey, Sunday afternoon, whoever shows up will play something. And the last 2 Sundays, and I need to send out another reminder for tomorrow, but the last 2 Sundays we had people, and it was different people. We had the same 2 people in both. My oldest daughter happened to be here the first time, and Josh and his wife were here last weekend. But we played ShadowDark. I've been wanting to try it out, kick the tires on ShadowDark a little bit. The first session was kind of a little bit clunky. We were playing through using the quick start adventure. And it was the clunkiness on like our part, not the system's part, because we were still learning it. But that's the way that I've started with the campaign stuff, is just, I don't have the time to sit down and plan a full campaign. Let me correct that. I do have the time to sit down and plan a full campaign, or at least like the background of a campaign. But the gaming has been so spotty for the last X number of years that amount of prep is not worth it. And so I grabbed just one of the very few times in my gaming career, I grabbed a module and I'm running the module, and it was fun. I made for ShadowDark, there's a torch timer. Like every light source only lasts 1 hour. Sorry about the dogs. Every torch timer only lasts 1 hour, and no one has dark vision except the monsters. You know, no players have dark vision. And so I built this little electronic light that changes every 20 minutes to show that the torch is burning down. And I was running Foundry VTT, which has the quick start in it, and it has some torch timers as well in it. And so it has a nice fog of war set up as well. So they had this little tiny area that they could see on the television, because that's where I was putting it up there. And they all had to huddle together because they only lit one torch during the first game. And so it was only like a 30 foot radius sort of illumination. Right. Before they couldn't see anything. One thing hasn't happened yet, which is them having to leave and me going, okay, how do you get out? Because they weren't mapping when they went along.
Go ahead.
You had a brilliant idea in the first one.
I put my left hand on the left wall, and we followed the left wall wherever it went.
Yes.
So not a map per se.
I don't like mapping, so I figured, if we always know that the left wall was on our left side, then we just turn around and right hand on the right wall, and now we can just follow it out.
Right.
And that's what we did. We went wherever the left. It made all of our decisions of left or right very easy at that point. It's always left. It doesn't matter. It's left.
And in the first session, they happened to go, there's 3 entrances to this location. They happened to go in the entrance that really literally was kind of a little labyrinth.
Gotcha.
And so they went through and did the whole left hand on the wall thing, and then were able to get out. This next one, they did not do the left hand on the wall. And they got fairly far in it. But the way that I end it, is basically at the end of the session, I say they all go back to town.
Gotcha.
But I think if they ever go in and don't have many light sources, that I'll start, and they say like, okay, we want to head out. We want to head back. I'm going to say, okay, well, tell me how you head back. But it has a very early days of D&D feel in that sort of sense, and I could totally pull an early D&D sort of trick of, rotating wall, or they fall down a pit into another area of the dungeon and then have to find their way out, or blow all their torches out and then teleport them somewhere else in the dungeon. That's something that could happen in this sort of game. And it has that sort of not quite funhouse dungeon feel, but very much the feel of an old school D&D game.
So, Aaron, when you're starting a new campaign, although, I mean, Sparks has been around forever, and I know you run stuff for that, but, like, when you're starting a new campaign, are there particular, like, things that you try and figure out? Like, are you kitchen sink like I am, where you just, like, start pulling stuff off the shelf and, like, putting together random playlists? Are you more methodical, somewhere in between? Like, what's your style?
To give them a reason to be doing what they're doing. Star Wars was kind of, it lended itself to, there's the Empire, and you've decided that finally enough is enough, and you don't like the direction of this, and you're running. And so you started off being chased, and nothing motivates a character more than being chased at first level, because you're not really capable of dealing with the overwhelming amount of forces that are coming after you. So you are running. And I think that's a great motivator. But I go back to basically, I think, the hero's journey, you have to have a reason why your character is leaving their somewhat comfortable life, some sort of inciting event. And I think being chased is a really good one, because it means you can't sit around. You can't just, I go to the cavern and I sit there and drink my life away. You have to keep moving.
Yeah, like that's a great point, right? Like, start in the action rather than, we're just here for some reason.
It is.
I start games. I write for this campaign, and I start games where you're in the soup, and nothing wakes up players more than, oh my gosh, I'm already in combat and I just sat down.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point too, right? Like, I think I'm trying to think back to the D&D movie, but I think they start with him trying to escape from the prison, right? Like the most like Honor Among Thieves or whatever, the one with
and then they do the flashback.
Right, then they do the flashback to how he got there, right? But he immediately starts with like trying to break out of this prison after they were like gonna let him go, right? But you're immediately into the action. You're jumping out of a window with Bird Guy trying to cushion your landing, right? It's a great way, especially I think now that we're like, this particular campaign will also be online, right? So I'm trying to get into the action. I could see like setting up the first adventure where you've already looted the crypt, but now the cultists of the god whom you just looted the crypt of want their stuff back. Nice. Right? And they're chasing you all the way back to Greyhawk. That could be fun.
Yeah. And it really, like, it will depend in terms of like how you start the campaign. It will depend on how well you know your players. There are some players who always have a motivation for their character and are always very proactive, but that is not the case for everyone.
Right.
So if you don't know any of the players, like if you're at a con game, in the case of Sparks, or if you are starting a newer-ish game group and you don't really know the players, or if you know your players and you know you have a mix of those, you need some sort of thing to get those people who are not as proactive into the action, into the campaign, and bought in and excited for it. Right. So
I feel like immediate conflict does that with players that I sit down and I just notice that they're waiting for me to tell them the story. If I'm putting risk, consequences, and choices right in front of them already, it wakes up their brains and they realize that they have the agency to decide how this goes, and it's not just me dragging them through the adventure.
Right.
Yeah.
They have choices to make. I think the earlier you can start giving your players consequential choices, the more they are going to buy into this. If you keep them passive, they're going to sit back and think, okay, it's just like when I was in elementary school and the teacher talked at me for 45 minutes and then I got
Right.
up and left.
Right.
If you put, you're on a cliff and you're being chased by rhinos in front of you, what do?
Right.
That's a little bit more, oh, wait, I have to do something. And I think GMs can make their players too passive. And the more you put your players into that driver's seat that they have to make consequential choices, the faster they're going to buy into it. And the faster you're going to see character growth and engagement.
Yeah. That's one thing that I would have liked to have done better in the ShadowDark campaigns was I gave players choices, but they weren't like super impactful choices, and they weren't choices in the heat of the moment. It was because it was the beginning of that module. I think I would start people somewhere else, like not start people right outside. I would probably start people in an area of the dungeon and saying, this is where you are and this is what's happening. It, like I said, it really depends upon your group, but I think partly my group ended up being that teacher, those kids in the classroom while I was explaining stuff in some of those games, those parts of that game. And I need to change that so that everybody is engaged.
Yeah, I could see that. I think back to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, right? Where we start off with young Indy and he's in a mine, I think, and he realizes like there's the bad guys are there trying to steal this, the cross of Coronado. And, Indy in that moment is like, and it's young Indy, right? But he's making the decision that belongs in a museum, right? Like from a young age, he knows that. Now you put some other players in that position. Imagine like you're just ripping that off for your own campaign because we love to do that. And now same sort of setup. The other adventuring party has found this holy relic. You've got your characters. What do? Right? Are you going to get it and go sell it in Greyhawk? Right? Are you going to know that we need to return it to the church for whom it belongs? Right? Like you're immediately forcing a moral choice, even if the players don't realize you're forcing a moral choice.
Yeah. And hopefully they don't choose the boring choice of the other parties here and they got it. That's pretty dangerous. We leave.
Yeah. I mean, that is a choice.
They're refusing the call of adventure.
Yeah, you could choose to do that, right? Like, nope, we're going home. It does help, but I think the thing is, and I think this is like part of what Aaron was talking about, right? Like, you're setting the tone for the campaign. Maybe they're just always going to play it safe, right? And then in that case, the danger comes looking for them sometimes, right? Like you get to the free city and like, there's a runaway cart and it's going to smash into them, and you don't want to railroad them, but like
no, but their actions also have consequences. If they've refused the call to adventure, this artifact that the other party stole is now being used and is threatening something that they hold dear. Like their family, their lives, the city they live in, whatever. And then they're called to adventure again. So it would be another way to play that.
It would be funny if you start a campaign and the players just actively refuse every call to adventure. It'd be interesting to see what they did choose and like how that happens. So I like the idea that the world continues to evolve around them, right? Like, so those adventurers recover. Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
You're kind of in the Spider-Man situation then. Oh, you refused the call to adventure? Well, somebody died now.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
And I always think the beginning of a campaign should include basically an origin story. And that's kind of where you start, is what is the origin of this group? And if you come to it from that point of view, that you have to help crafting the origin story of this group of people, then I think you're going to end up with more buy-in.
I will say, if they refuse the call to adventure multiple times, I think so that's when you have to pause the game and go, guys, do you want to play this game, or are you just going to like live as farmers? Should we play the farmer game, or are you going to be adventurers? You know, and yes, it breaks immersion, but at the same time, the consensus is you're here to play an adventure game. You're adventurers. Why are you refusing all these calls to adventure?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the flip side to it is when I was playing with our kids, or our Black Razor kids adventure, they did like kind of refuse the call to adventure because they wanted to raise goats and make goat milkshakes. And it's like, okay, you know, but then, you know, the goblins still ended up stuff still ended up happening, but they still got to raise their goats.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get it, but they got to raise their goats.
Right. But like that group, I would say actually is different than the group that I'm talking about, of like actively like running away from the adventure. They had something they wanted to do.
Right.
Which you could certainly dive into and hook on. And then the adventure, you know, like then action happens to them. The world interjects into their raising of goats and get goat milkshakes.
Right.
You know, now they have to settle the world down in order to comfortably raise goats for goat milkshakes.
Right.
As opposed to, I'm just not going to engage with anything.
Right.
So.
Threats to goats.
Yeah, threats to goats. Yeah, the goblins goats. As you said, the goblins came to threaten the goats. They definitely are invested in those goats.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
We do have a question. It's a future overlord question, actually. It's a question from a future overlord, which we haven't had one in a while. But I think it fits with this, is in building my dark empire in a campaign, what are the most critical aspects to consider for it to be both formidable and sustainable?
In building your future dark empire, how do you build a sustainable dark empire?
Formidable and sustainable dark empire. And unfortunately, we are out of time. So if those of you out there watching, listening, give us your ways to build formidable and sustainable dark empires. So we want to hear that. We want to hear that feedback. So, and if you give us good feedback, we'll talk about it. But this has been Campaigns and Coffee, and like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Hit the little bell icon. Come over to layersecrets.com and chat with us over there. Join our Discord. All that stuff.